The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to the final episode of 2022, episode 259 of the Broadcasters Podcast. And with this, we basically close up on the fourth year of this program, and year 5 begins next week. And when we get to this point, the anniversary basically is coming back around again. I'm just so happy with where things go with this show, and just that I really took a lot of time to really figure out where this show goes and where we're supposed to go with how this goes, right? Just a matter of when I think about all the episodes going back and just trying to think about how much I've wanted to figure out how this show would work to make it work right. And I feel really good about it. I'm very happy with where things have gone, and just trying to figure out that I wanted to be able to just chronicle what's going on with media because of my own background in media that goes back to the fact that I worked in radio, I worked in television news, and I worked in newspapers. And I've gotten to be a radio programmer. I've gotten to be in certain areas of management and understand the business of things. And remember, I took a long time talking to a lot of experts in the field, people that were influencers, content creators, actors, cinematographers, directors, producers, and music people, in the PR department, or people or producers themselves. And just remember, I took a lot of time when I did a lot of interviews early on in the series, and I went through and I just started talking to everybody just to get an understanding of things. So in the 4 years, I've taken a real journey of this show. Started calling it Creative, Not Corporate. Then they moved it on, called it Broadcasters Podcast, and moved along and moved forward with the show. And right now, I like where the show's going. It's never going to be a big audience. It's a very niche-driven show in media, until I started doing things where there would be certain episodes I would talk more about something a little more mainstream, something a little more celebrity, or something that would be based in, that would be very viral, something that was trending topics, and I would go ahead and talk about that. And those were some of the things that I thought were really good to talk about, and we would go through all that. And when I look at where things have gone on, the digital disruption, which has been always the ongoing subject of this program, and now we're at the point where the media establishment, which in 2017 was a different place. I think about where things were in that first episode, and I just say to myself, at the moment I said that radio and TV were trying to stay relevant in abeyance of the corporate suits, in the ongoing evolution of consumers becoming on demand and consuming more on their own time. And remember, we were just still getting more things out off the bat. When you think about all the changes we went through, you're thinking about changes we go back to, what can I say? I'm going back and I'm thinking about all the different areas of where Spotify wasn't as big a thing, and Apple Music, and just thinking that music streaming wasn't as prominent yet. It was still important for people to go out and be able to buy CDs or vinyl and still find units, still physical units. Even at this point, people were still going through that route. Of course, streaming was starting to become very important at that point. Because in 2016 is when I adapted into streaming, but I still listened to radio, and I still thought it was important. But in the 4 years plus of this program, that's all changed. We're at the point now where, it doesn't matter. Things have changed so much that we're not in the space anymore where things have gone in a direction where, you think about where television programming has changed, the erosion, the cable cutting. You think about where movies have gone, where, the Marvel movies were really up and at it and really strong at that point, but then things just continued to change. And everything just went all the way to a different direction. And you say to yourself, well, what happens now? It's just, everything was just changing. And it was incredible. You think of the big franchises we had, that were talking about everything. Remember, when you think about, we went through with Breaking Bad and Star Wars and Game of Thrones and all the things that were going on with that. And then you're thinking about the Marvel universe, the DC universe, all these major things. And then the music was such a difference too, when you talk about all the music that's going on out there and just this change of everything. You think about rap has gone in a major decline. Rap music. Pop music is also going in a direction where, like, there's certain artists that just can't be big artists anymore. And viral music is just viral. Because remember, we didn't have TikTok as a thing before. You know, it was only in the last couple of years. And what a major change has done. And YouTube content creation has changed so much as well in this time. It's such a big difference now. And I'm amazed by it all. But the thing is that we're now at a point where it's safe for me to say that 2023, the media companies, the media conglomerates, thanks to basically what we have as a recession with inflation, recessionary period is now in play. Because all the media companies are hurting. They're all making some major changes. Warner Brothers Discovery, Bob Iger returning back to the helm at Disney, the issues with Warner Brothers Discovery and the DCEU universe now with James Gunn coming back into play. And across the board, all these streaming services in the last couple of years, we had Quibi that came and went. And we're now at a point where, like, the streaming services, they put out and forked out so much on content. And now they're all hurting to keep subscribers or hold on to them. So it's not just a win-win situation where, like, okay, if we're going to lose an audience that was watching on over-the-air networks, well, they're going away. The audience is dwindling down to below 8 million viewers for cable or TV. The fact that Yellowstone is one of the highest audiences for a scripted show at 8 million viewers. Other than that, it's live sports and awards. Otherwise, what else do you have that's going to hold up and really be strong? Well, that's a really hard thing to talk about, to try to predict. But the truth is, the mainstream, this media establishment, is crumbling. It's caving right now. The panic button has been hit. It's being pushed a lot. We're going to DEFCON 2 now. Like, it's just getting really seriously bad. The bundling's going to come very soon, where you're going to get streaming services are going to combine. HBO Max is going to become Max. Disney and Hulu now in a new bundle. Here's now where their AP, ABC, and ESPN might be unloaded by Disney with where things are going with that. Media is going to go through a lot of changes here. And that's also not to mention all the things that are going on with it. There's a problem of an impending writer's strike that also could be happening as well. Because we might get to the Hollywood unions talking about this again. And remember, we went through all that before, right? Well, maybe that's going to happen again. Maybe we're going to have some other trade unions are going to start going along, and things are going to start going bad again. It's going to work. You just have to think about the fact of where things will go and how things will get there. And so these are issues that everybody has to worry about. And to think what COVID did to everything that was going on with media. And that right now in 2023, everything's starting to get back to the way it was. Like, we're still seeing some COVID-related effects from all the shows that are out there, especially when you look at all the talk shows and The Price is Right and Let's Make a Deal, and how they still have things set up that way. And how they need to get themselves back to being a little of a normalized format now because it's got to all change. And there's just so much more that's happening that's all got to be considered. And it's just so much. So keep that all in mind. It's all going to happen soon. It's going to be a big difference. A real big difference. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and move into what I got for stories this week. There's a lot to go into, but we're not going to go very long on the show. I just want to get through a lot of things we have here, cover them, and then we move forward, and it'll all be fine. So I'm going to go and describe all that for you real quick, just so you can take a look at what's going on. So let's go and start off real quick and start with the fact that Peak TV broke records in 2022, and it will not happen again. Because where things are changing, they're changing by a lot. 2024 original shows released across TV and subscription streaming. It's just way too much content. It's quality, with not enough quality out of the quantity. It really is. And I can only imagine where things are going to go from here. It's not good. And they talk about the shows that were unscripted for broadcast TV, broadcast, cable, and SVOD, subscription video on demand. 2002 was 125. Then go 10 years later, 1,200. And then you get now to 2,000. And even the break when there was 2019 before pandemic was 1,600. And it would just continued increase year after year. Dropped to 1,500 in 2020, then goes blast right back up to 1,887. Because we just had a little bit, so much of different extra content was being done in 2020 and overcompensated. And we've been at that point ever since. You also look at what shows have been out there that have been scripted to unscripted. And we've had unscripted programming all through 2002, all the way up the last 20 years. And then you look and you just see the increase of what was happening, where there's a lot more scripted shows now than before. 849 compared to 1175 unscripted now. And the last time it might have, was there ever a point it was actually kind of even? No. Usually like 3-1, 4-1. Where scripted would be a lot more. A scripted was a really big thing when you're talking about 2013, 2014, 2015, where you had over 1,000 scripted shows, unscripted shows at one point. Because it was the bloating of the reality TV era, which probably pushed a lot of people away from watching TV. And then you look at the cable and how that changed. What a great variety of intelligence platform, and how they describe here the significant change of what we had in programming. When you look at the fact that going back to 2009, when NCIS was such a dominant show, 25, 30 million viewers. Big Bang Theory would be on, 16 million viewers. That's the kind of level of programming that we had out there. And like shows would go on and they would definitely garner over 10 million viewers. You could still do that in the 2010s. And then cable blew up. You're talking about 2008, 453, almost 600 2009, 750 2010, 965 2011, and then over 1,000 shows from 2012 to 2017. And then 2015 or 2014 was when we started seeing the change of the guard, because Netflix started coming out with House of Cards, and then you had Hulu with Lilyhammer, and then you started seeing scripted programming on all the streaming video on demand. It goes from 187 in 2016 to 251 to 378 in 2018, 473 in 2019, over 600 in 2020, and almost 1,000 shows on streaming currently. 200 shows for network, 824 for cable, and almost 1,000 for streaming now. It's incredible how much has gone up and how much of a change there is. So peak TV is never going to go that high again. And people need to realize there just can't be that much content out there, because nobody's catching it all, and not all of it is good. These major platforms, these media establishment, they need to realize they need to start going back to programming that is quality. But they're stuck by that. They're stuck by that right now. And what is right now growing among all the other things when it comes to where things are with television? Yellowstone and the NFL. And Variety right now, if you're looking at their episodes right now, currently for what? Well, season 4 had one of the biggest debuts, over 12 million viewers for episode 1. And, well, season 5, excuse me. And you look at how their show began and started every season. Season 1 over 2 million viewers, and was flat, basically stayed consistent across the board. Season 2, you'd have a big increase as well. 4 million viewers to start off season 3, ends with over 4.5 million, almost 5. Then season 5 comes in and it doubles. 10 million viewers for the debut. The finale gets 10 million viewers. And they stay around the 8 million mark throughout the entire run of season 4. And now season 5, 12 million viewers, it is taking a drop now. So now they're around the 10 million mark, but that's still better than anybody else out there. That's where we are. TV subscriptions for every cable service is pretty much going down in the last 6 years. Comcast, Charter, Dish, Verizon, Altice. Sling is up slightly. Hulu Live TV is up. Everybody else is down. And we talk about the NFL pulling 10 to 20 million viewers per game Christmas Day and then Thanksgiving. Just 2022 audiences. The midday game with the Lions, 31 million viewers. For the Cowboys game, 43 million viewers. The Raiders game, 24.8 million viewers. The NFL is a monster. A monster. It just continues to grow. And no one is thinking about what you can do to get that audience. You're just talking about Yellowstone's a phenomenon of a show. It's a appointment television. Once again. Now we're back to that. What happens next? It's a lot to look at. So that's one part of the dynamic where the panic mode is there. Because what is television going to do? I mean, sure, you might have shows like Wednesday, they might get 35 million viewers. Or, they might get the Knives Out movie that'll have 35 million viewers. That's great. But it's like, for Netflix to continue to be strong, they can't just live off of one show. They need multiple shows. They're going to experiment with live programming next year with Chris Rock's stand-up show, March 3rd. It's a big deal. Now that streaming might go back to actually live programming. Peacock does it. Amazon Prime Video does it. Paramount Plus does it. Like, just imagine. Where are things going to go now if we're going to go back to live programming? And can it happen? Will there be a big enough audience that will absolutely want to watch a live, raw, uncensored performance by Chris Rock? One of his first major specials after the Will Smith incident. Well, the domestic box office. Movies greatly affected right now because of streaming. Because it's eating its own by the fact that the streamers are doing what they're doing. And then there's a lot of issues when it comes to the movies not doing well. One of the things they talk about with Deadline magazine, they talk about the fact that how there should be $9 billion expected next year in the box office, domestically. 33 tentpoles. But then you got to ask yourself, of all these different intellectual properties, the adult pictures, movies like The Menu or Babylon for that matter, if those movies continue to hurt and they're not making the kind of money that you should, because it's really hard this year to have found movies that really stood out and made a lot of money. Because when you look at what there was, it's tough. Like, just look at the 2022 box office this year. The annual box office at this point. At the moment, total box office gross right now, $7 billion, $7.324, and almost 800,000 tickets sold. Of your top grossing movies of the 2022 year, Sonic the Hedgehog, gross, $190 million. Spider-Man No Way Home, number 9. Avatar The Way of Water, number 8. Thor Love and Thunder, 7. 6, The Batman. 5, Minions: The Rise of Gru. Jurassic World Dominion, 4. 3, Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. 2, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Top Gun: Maverick, number 1. Above everybody else, $718 million. Domestic. If we want to count for worldwide, 1.487 million total. And it's on the Christmas weekend rush right now as well. That's a lot. You're talking about the biggest weekends in 2022. Doctor Strange was the highest at 187 million. Black Panther 181 million. And the top 8 broke over $100 million. Not a lot of tentpoles though. And these were all movies with major distribution because they all hit over 4,200 theaters to 4,500. So full capacity. Is it going to stay like that? There's a lot of movies that we're not going to be able to stay like that either when you think about it. It's a major struggle. Let's put it to you like this as well. Market share for each type of source material. How about this? If you're talking about based on a comic or graphic novel, that was 16 movies that made up $2.2 billion and 31% of the market share. Original screenplay, that was 247 movies with almost a $3 million gross. How about based on fiction or short story, 45 movies and $500 million. That's it. 6% of the market. You're talking about 70% are based off original screenplay, comic, or graphic novels. And that's it. Not much else to work off of. And how about this part? Contemporary fiction or superhero make up over $4 billion. Kids fiction over $1 billion. Science fiction over $1 billion. Not much else you can work off of. It's just that's where everything is. It's where we are. So will the movies do well with all these different movies coming out that all got pushed back from 2022 to 2023? Well, we're going to have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Flash, Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Asteroid City, Book Club 2, Cocaine Bear. Also, all coming out this year and coming out next year, 2023. 2019, at that point, we had $11.3 billion. So post-production logjam of the pandemic is starting to clear up now with a film for everyone every weekend, starting with The Ant and the Wasp: Quantumania on February 17th. 33 movies on the counter have the potential to gross well north of $100 million stateside. So business looks to improve. 100 wide releases are anticipated to hit the theatrical calendar next year, still down by 4 movies from this year's 104. So the collapse that weighs heavy on several studio executives' brows remains with original movies aimed at adults that are non-genre, meaning not action, not sci-fi, and not horror. So there's 2 casualties so far this past Christmas, which is number 1, the $80 million budgeted Paramount Margot Robbie Brad Pitt's award season bait Babylon. And then you have Whitney Houston's biopic I Want to Dance with Somebody, which also hurt badly. $45 million production budget. And currently that movie right now only earned $6.75 million in 4 days. And Babylon, $5 million. And that's it. And we just didn't have certain movies that were out there. No Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, no Martian, no Dunkirk. Otherwise, you'd have adults that would be going. Glass Onion would have brought a lot of adults, but they pushed it off to streaming. Then you brought Top Gun Maverick back just to try to get adults back as well. And one studio marketing chief was asked on an anonymity, he or she mentions that the pandemic has produced new habits in general for adults above 50 years old, and it's not movie going. So now you have the audiences that are going out. Now the baseline of an audience now is they read reviews, they're educated, they have time, energy, and money to spend. And pre-pandemic, you get at least $2 million out of the audience in a given weekend. So you've had product and movies that have had lackluster reviews, long-running times, or niche appeal. And when it comes to mid and low-budget original adult fare, distribution support and bigger marketing spending is already greatly needed. Now, Paramount did support Babylon a lot. Executive turnover at the studio between administration that greenlit the movie to the one that released it. They put out a trailer at the Toronto International Film Festival, previewed the movie to the media more than a month before September 23rd release. It has 5 Golden Globe nominations, by the way. But again, 4 days, and the movie didn't break $5 million. By the way, I went to see Babylon. I enjoyed it. I'm one of those that is in the camp that I really enjoyed the movie. The love for Hollywood. I thought Margot Robbie was great in it. Brad Pitt was great in it. Diego Calva was great in it. It was a great movie. So there's 2 big takeaways from studio executives for 2022. That making these original adult demo movies cheaper than they are and shorter in running time. That's what they need to do. And that the 17-day theatrical window model doesn't do any good. Because people know that there's just only so much time and the movie's going to go out to streaming and that's it. Like Adam in 30 Days, of course it's going to hurt. Knives Out, only getting about, $5-6 million when it could have gotten a lot more if it had a more theatrical window? Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then we have to see what Disney's going to be able to do in 2023. Because they had Strange World that also hurt badly this year. They might have had Light here this year. And it did make out over $118 million stateside. And there were Pixar movies that got put right to streaming with Turning Red, Soul, and Luca. And now there's a thought that maybe there's just certain movies that might not be as important on the Disney end, and that might make people say, well, we'll just wait for Disney Plus to get it. So adult films, we got some good opportunities. Well, Oppenheimer's going to come out for Christopher Nolan July 16th. You know, Asteroid City coming out June 16th. There's a new Adam Driver guy-skiing sci-fi movie called 65. It'll go along at the same time with Shazam! Fury of the Gods on March 17th. Jennifer Lawrence is going to have an R-rated comedy called No Hard Feelings coming out on June 23rd. Sebastian Maniscalco's big screen leading man debut will be a movie called About My Father, and he'll have Robert De Niro. And a new Meet the Parents coming out on May 26th. The pandemic forced creators in town as they stared down the barrel of closed movie theaters that take the fast money on the safe path of getting paid at the expense of quality and bespoke marketing campaigns. When we think of theatrical, when was the era that these original adult films did a lot at the box office? To make them work, it takes a lot of pressure on talent reps and studio executives to shape them as theatrical movies. Yep. So as you said, of the movies that are coming out next year, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Creed 3 is March 3rd, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, John Wick Chapter 4 is March 24th, Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, March 31st, Super Mario Brothers are April 7th, Guardians of the Galaxy, May 5th, Fast X, May 19th, Little Mermaid, live action, May 26th, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Part 1, June 2nd, Transformers Rise of the Beast, June 9th, Elemental, June 16th, The Flash, June 16th, Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny, June 30th, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, July 14th, Oppenheimer, July 21st, Barbie, July 21st, Marvels, July 28th, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, August 4th, The Second Meg, August 4th, Haunted Mansion, August 11th, Blue Beetle, August 18th, The Nun 2, Kraven the Hunter, Dune Part 2 is November 3rd, Trolls 3, November 17th, Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, November 17th, Wonka, December 15th, A New Color Purple, a sequel to Ghostbusters Aftermath, Migration and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom roll out next year, and who knows what else we get. So there's a lot of movies coming out, Will they hold up well? Will the theatrical window be good in place? It's all these things we got to consider and understand. There's another story I talk about, which is what worked, what flopped, what makes a yellow roller coaster year of the movie theaters, but I'll leave that for you to go and read about and check out yourselves. A few other stories I want to just jump on. Here's something that was really bad. Radio.com. I don't even know if the website was still available, but yeah, CBS Radio and then Odyssey picked it up, and they've left it dormant since 2021. And now they're going to put up for auction at GoDaddy. Minimum bid, $2,500 to get in. I can only imagine how much it's going to be worth. And if anybody wants to use radio.com for anything, I still think it's a good domain. But I think it being dormant and Odyssey's just going to try to get something off of it because they need money back. You know, we'll see what it does, but it's at a GoDaddy auction. So if you're interested, take a look. Also, a story that came out about how radio can appeal to young consumers. There was a British polling or survey that was done to talk about what the British market was doing right now when it comes to radio. It's a good indicator to see what American radio could probably learn from this. And RadioWorld.com had put the story out and talked about it. The others who wrote the story talks about that radio's reinvented itself to go where the listeners are. It could do so again. So there was a digital radio and audio of you exploring issues that are relevant to broadcasters everywhere. Commissioned by the Department of Digital Culture, Media, and Sport, prompted by the question of whether analog radio should be sunset. And that radio is still considered a great British success story, and the medium has evolved to embrace digital opportunities to maintain universal appeal. A thriving radio market with new online formats from broadcasters and new entrants growing rapidly, bringing increased choice and new habits to the UK's audio sector. And there's been a decline in younger listeners as online music options proliferate. In the last 10 years, 15 to 24-year-olds are declining by 8%, and the average hours that they would listen went down by almost a quarter, from 16 hours, 18 minutes in 2010 to 12 hours, 30 minutes in 2020. And this is British radio. It's not U.S. It'll be a lot different. So 25 to 34-year-olds are listening to less live radio. We have smart speakers now for in-the-home listening, and people do listen to radio broadcasts on their smart speakers, but the use of smart speakers to listen to radio has fallen among 16 to 34-year-olds and rises among older people. And then they go along and talk about a story from Fred Jacobs that talks about how this is going on as well. And you had the recent edition of Burrell's Local Marketing Trends podcast where they talk to NAB President and CEO Curtis Legate. And he says, quote, that what is always going to differentiate radio is the trust of the local personality in the live programming, but there's not much live and local. He says, I think radio will continue to thrive in that regard, whether they are distributing that programming through AM, FM, traditional terrestrial signal, or whether their programming is being consumed through a stream, through an adjacent podcast, whatever it may be. The local and live advantage. Well, I don't know where he's talking about that because there's not a whole lot of that there anymore. Just got to say that point. But James Cridland, who writes for Radio World, says that radio's reaction to declining linear audiences appears to be cut costs on output, making radio even less likely to compete well with more interactive offerings by Spotify, Amazon, or other services. Real human beings, quote, producing relevant output to their audiences appears to be the way forward. Real and relevant could come from live and local, but it doesn't have to. That said, it's much harder to deliver real and relevant using nonstop automated music or short presenter breaks, voice tracks 6 days ago in a different city. He's right about all this. Fred Jacobs makes the point about how that radio can't survive this second extinction level event. That radio in a more complex media future cannot and will not be what it was. It's morphed to meet the moment before. The challenge of today is more arduous and financially precarious, but the medium has the ability to adapt and become a different version of itself. Which is why I've always said that radio needs to be the arbiters of new music. The arbiters of quality out there. They need to be the ones that are filtering out what's good, what's not. and bringing us the people that are putting this music out there so we can learn more about it. And at the same time, they could also make it so that where we can learn about all these different artists on these different radio stations and hear the music out there and get a chance to really appeal. But they're not doing that right now. A couple of stories I want to bring up. Billboard talking about how TikTok is now, the hit songs are not streaming as well. Top 10 TikTok tracks stream far less in 2022 than they did in 2020. The app usage isn't translating as well to consumption. We haven't had a whole lot of dance challenges and things like that, so that's not helping either. And so that's one of the things that you're talking about as well that's a bit of an issue. Oli Oberman, with global head of music with Spotify, or with TikTok, he explained that 13 out of 14's Billboard Hot 100's number ones were supported by viral trends on TikTok. And TikTok has changed markedly in the last few years, making it harder to turn success on the app into those opportunities. TikTok's user base is splintering into smaller communities that share the same interests, meaning that capturing everyone's eyeballs and ears is increasingly difficult. And there's more being said about it. There's even a story that came out from Billboard that says, is TikTok's music industry love affair with TikTok, is that going dead? We've talked about that before. But where we are right now, there's a whole lot more going on that meets the eye. We can just say that. One of the stories I had out here was songwriters, when they can use AI to generate music. We might have to keep an eye on that and see if that's going to be something that will be much more of an issue going up down the line. And it's a lot of that's coming up. So have to keep an eye on it and what comes of it. There's a lot there. But anyway, we're going to leave it there. That's the show for the night. That's how we're going to end 2022. So next week, we'll get back into things. We'll continue to go and talk what's going on when it comes to the panic button being pushed right now. We haven't talked about podcasting. We didn't talk about that yet, but we've talked a lot about it before. We could always talk more about radio, but the thing is, I wanted to give a full spectrum of where things are right now and the whole gamut of media right now. Because what is thriving is online. Through TikTok, through YouTube, through various other video platforms, and a lot of content out there from people that are just learning to know how to do it, and they're going out there and they're excelling and they're succeeding among more than you would have imagined. It's a great thing that's happening. I'm enjoying it. I love it. So that's where we are. Thanks for listening in to the Broadcasters Podcast. Come back next week. And remember that content is king. And the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.